Okay, welcome to the February 18th meeting of the governing body. I bring this meeting to order. And if you will give your attention to Councilwoman Hiller, who's out in outer space somewhere, she's going to introduce the invocation. And then excuse me, sir, could you, okay, thank you. If she will introduce our invocation this evening, stand as you are able, and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm proud to introduce to you my friend and colleague and constituent, Anna Wilkins. Anna and I were both part of the incredible experience of being part of the spoken word choir organized by Arts Connect and the artist Vanessa German to produce the Way of Light operetta in May of 2024 as part of the Brown v. Board 70th anniversary series of events. Anna was born and raised in East and Southwest Topeka, today lives in our downtown area. Professionally, she is retired from a 25-year career as a federal mediator for courts and federal agencies in Topeka and in Minnesota. She is also a seasoned birth doula, loves those moms and babies. Personally, she is a mother, a grandmother, and a published author, poet, and open mic spoken word enthusiast. She is an active member of Speakeasy Poets in Noto, as well as the Sunflower Society of Poets in Kansas. I asked her to come speak tonight and share one of her poems to start our meeting. Anna. She's with us online.
Hello.
Ms. Wilkins, can you hear us?
Hello.
Ms. Wilkins?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, this is Mayor Padilla. Are you ready to provide the invocation?
Yes, I am, sir.
Go
Thank
ahead,
you.
please.
The even grounds of tranquility have become rocky. Clear eyes can see we are climbing a mountain of troubling times. As we head towards the peak, allow selective hearing to listen to all voices. Allow love in our hardened hearts to remove the ideas of hatred that keeps us apart. And as we descend towards the uncertainty in the valley below, allow respect, ability to persevere, and kindness to grow. With honest minds, realize there are tasks and work to be done, and understand there is enough equality, faith, and hope for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll move on to the first item. Roll call. Madam Clerk.
Mayor Padilla.
Here.
Hiller. Councilmember Hiller.
Here.
Councilmember Valdivia Acala.
Here.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Here.
Councilmember Banks. Councilmember Kell.
Here.
Councilmember Miller. Councilmember Miller. Councilmember Dobler.
Here.
And Councilmember Duncan.
Here.
And Councilmember Hofer. Councilmember Hofer. All right, looks like we have 7 present with 3 with Banks, Miller and Hofer absent.
Thank you. We'll proceed now with presentations. Madam Clerk?
Okay. Sorry, one second here. Okay, so we have a presentation for the 2025 strategic goals and priorities.
Mr. City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the governing body. If I could defer this item to the March 4th agenda, I'd appreciate it.
I'm sorry.
I would like to defer this item, sir, to the March 4th council agenda.
Okay. Is there any objection from the body? Seeing none, it'll be deferred. You're welcome. Move on to the consent agenda. Megan?
All right, item 3A, we have a resolution for the St. Patrick's Day Street Party of 2025 for a noise exemption. That will be introduced by Councilmember Karen Hiller, granting the Celtic Fox an exception to the provisions of the City of Topeka Code Section 9.45.150 concerning noise prohibitions. Item B will be the minutes of the regular meeting of February 11th. We ask that those are deferred to the March 4th governing body meeting, and there are no applications.
Okay. You've heard the consent agenda as read. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Deputy Mayor. Second by Councilman Duncan. Because we're on Zoom, we'll have to go through a roll call vote.
All right, Councilmember Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Hofer, Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Acala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
and, oh, all right. Do I need to? Okay, so we have 8, was that Miller?
Yes, it is.
Okay, perfect. All right, Councilmember Miller, yes. Okay, so we have 9 yes, the motion carries.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to action items. Agenda item number 4. When you're ready, Madam Clerk.
All right, item 4A is a public hearing and ordinance introduced by City Manager Dr. Robert M. Perez to annex lands all pursuant to KSA 12520, located at 5928 Southwest 53rd Street and unaddressed Southwest Wanamaker Road within unincorporated Shawnee County, Kansas, and adjacent to the City of Topeka corporate limits and being annexed for all city purposes.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the governing body. Dan Warner, our Division Director of Planning, will lead us through this item.
Hello, Dan.
Hello. Thank you, City Manager, Mayor, governing body. You might remember that the governing body approved a resolution in December to hold a public hearing to consider this annexation. Property is located at 53rd and Wanamaker. Key points here, it's contiguous to the city and is currently connected to city sewer. The public hearing is required in this particular case for this annexation because the property is not consented and it's owned by a public taxing entity, so we use a different process. There are a number of steps required for this annexation, so I mentioned the resolution that was approved by the governing body in December to set this public hearing. Staff sent public notice to all impacted entities. There's a plan for extension of services within your packet, and then the public hearing is tonight. So this annexation represents the first step in a process to annex additional property in the area. In other words, this annexation will facilitate further annexations and ultimately to annex land that can be developed for residential development within the city. So staff recommends that the governing body approve the annexation. Be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions from the governing body? Anybody online? Any questions for Mr. Warner? This particular item on the agenda requires a public hearing procedure, so at this time I will open the public hearing and ask if there is anyone present who would like to speak to the matter. Is there anyone present who would like to speak to this matter? And for the third time, is there anyone present who would like to speak to the matter? Not hearing any, the public hearing is closed. And I'll ask the governing body members if they have any additional comments they would like to make or a motion.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilman Duncan, seconded by Councilwoman Ortiz. If you call the roll, Megan.
Councilmember Duncan,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Akala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
and Dobler.
Yes.
All right, we have 8 yes, the motion carries.
Okay. Thank you for your votes. We'll move on to action item B, if you will read.
4B is a resolution introduced by the Public Infrastructure Committee comprised of council members Sylvia Ortiz, David Banks, and Neil Dobler, recommending approval of project number 841098, Phase 1, for street improvement for Southwest Harrison Street from 10th Avenue to 8th Avenue.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the governing body. Steve Groen, Director of Public Works, will lead us through this item.
Steve?
Mr. Mayor, Governing Board, good evening. This is a project consisting of pavement rehabilitation on Southwest Harrison Street between 8th and 10th. A portion of this is a cost share with the state of Kansas. Here to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Steve on this item? Councilwoman Ortiz?
Motion to approve?
Okay, motion to approve by Councilwoman Ortiz. Is there a second? Second by Councilwoman Hiller. If you'll call the roll, please.
Council members Hofer,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Akala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
and Duncan.
Yes.
All right, we have 9 yes, the motion carries.
Okay, thank you for your votes. Move to action item C. Madam Clerk.
C is a resolution introduced by the Public Infrastructure Committee comprised of council members Sylvia Ortiz, David Banks, and Neil Dobler, recommending approval of the 2025 microsurfacing project number 841104, Phase 1, part of the street preventative maintenance program to be performed in the southwest quadrant of the city.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the governing body. Steve Groen, our Director of Public Works, will lead us through this item.
Okay.
This is part of our 2025 street preventative maintenance program. It's our microsurfacing project, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay. Move to approve by Councilman Dobler, second by Councilwoman Ortiz. If you will call the vote, please.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Akala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan, okay, and Hofer.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we have 8 yes, the motion carries.
Okay. Move to action item D. Madam Clerk.
Okay. D is a resolution introduced by the Public Infrastructure Committee comprised of council members Sylvia Ortiz, David Banks, and Neil Dobler, recommending approval of project 841104, Phase 2 for the 2025 ultra-thin bonded asphalt surface treatments for segments of Northeast Quincy, Southeast Branner, Northeast Seward, Southeast 6, Southeast California, and Northeast Strait.
Hey, City Manager, should I just go straight to Steve on all these guys?
Yes, sir, for DN, yes, sir.
Okay. See,
Mr. Mayor, this also is part of our 2025 street contract preventative maintenance program. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Deputy Mayor Kell.
Just want to say, we did a test project last year, not Spencer, Braxton did it. His keyword was UBAS, and it looks amazing. It's over in my district. It's held up great, looks great. So this is something that I highly recommend we do as much as we can in the future, because this, as right now, it looks like it's holding up really well and looks really well, and still, after a year, still has that really good new road look to it.
I agree.
Want to make a motion?
Yeah. Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Deputy Mayor. Second?
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Ortiz. If you'll call the roll, please.
All right, Councilmember Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Akala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Hofer,
Yes.
and Mayor Padilla.
Yes.
All right, we have 9 yes, the motion carries.
Okay, thank you. We'll move to action item E. Madam Clerk.
E is a resolution introduced by the Public Infrastructure Committee comprised of council members Sylvia Ortiz, David Banks, and Neil Dobler, recommending approval of Project 841104, Phase 3 of 2025 crack sealing, part of the street preventative maintenance program to be performed in the southeast quadrant of the city.
Steve?
Mr. Mayor, this also is part of our 2025 street contract preventative maintenance program. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions from the body or a motion?
So move.
Motion to approve by Councilwoman Ortiz, second by Councilman Dobler. If you call the roll, please.
Councilmember Valdivia Akala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Hofer,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
and Hiller.
Yes.
Okay, we have 9 yes, the motion carries.
Thank you. Action item F. Madam Clerk.
Okay, F is the approval of amendments to the governing body rules of procedures 2.2 D for the virtual voting application.
City Attorney.
That's okay. I will tag team with the city manager whenever if he has input that he would like to talk about too. But I think this one's pretty simple. The city clerk has been working with communications, Dan, very extensively working to get a new voting system put in place so that you guys can use the fancy buttons and actually vote electronically. The new system will allow you to vote using an app, and it'll allow you to vote if you are at home or here in a legally authorized way. But to do that, the governing body rules had to be amended. So Rule 2.2 is where you will see the change in the governing body rules. Before, D had to make it clear that if you were physically here, you could use the voting board. If you were not physically here, we had to do a voice vote, because the new system will allow you to vote and make it clear how you voted if you're at home or here. We simply deleted the distinction, so now you must just simply indicate your vote.
And you don't have to raise your hand anymore to request to speak.
A flag wave. Any comments or questions, City Manager? Councilman Duncan.
So I have a question. I'm fully in support of this, but here's my rabbit hole question. So I'm at home. I got this new fancy app. I can hit the yes, no, abstain, whatever my options are. Our rules explicitly say you cannot use a proxy. My question is, what is our recourse if a council person, if I handed the phone to my 11-year-old and was like, Dad wants to watch this show, go ahead and vote how you want with the camera off, right? I don't expect any of us are going to do that, right? But that's my worst case scenario thought. What are our...
So worst case scenario, if you could demonstrate that someone had breached their fiduciary duty by allowing someone else to vote on something that they were legally required to vote on as an elected official, or as your rules say, anything, that could be cause for removal of office. That would be your recourse. Depending on the time frame that occurred in, you have so long to void certain actions. Ordinances can be voided if they were the defining vote, for instance, and you realize they didn't actually make that vote themselves. Some ordinances, once you're past a certain date, because of the impact to the public, they become bound, even if you found out later that there was something like that happened. But the biggest recourse would be individually, it could be removal of office. That would be grounds for ouster.
Okay. And both I asked that, Mayor, just so I know, because I was curious, but B, so that the universe and people hear that it's not an unpunishable act. So there are real world consequences if that did happen. So thank you.
Keep an eye on Connor. Pardon? Councilman Miller?
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'm also in support of it. I have a question though, and it kind of piggybacks off of Duncan's thought. If we have, would we need to be required to have a city phone? Because right now I use my city phone for all city work. Would we be required to use a city phone to do the app? Because I can see how it could be an issue, and I want to make sure that we're clear on if it should be a city app, and if it's not, what is the safeguard that you want us to do?
I believe Dan is going to come on and address this, so he's going to play double duty and work the cameras and answer questions.
Oh, I gotta, hold on.
First, he's going to do something else.
Hello, everyone. Dan Garrett, Director of Communications. So we will be issuing city tablets that will be set up on their own server. We're working with IT so that it will be a safe process. Now, there is the option that you could sign on a web browser, but we're also going to be working with IT to make sure that that is appropriate and that there are those fail-safes in place.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Thank you very much, because I know that if we have city devices, any 11-year-old shouldn't be on that device anyway. So I'm glad to know that that's the process we'll be using. So thank you.
Councilwoman Hofer and then Councilman Duncan. Councilwoman Hofer?
Oh, okay, couldn't hear you. What happens, like my trip I took last fall, and I took my city laptop and my personal phone. What if I run into a problem and I don't have my city phone? I only want to carry so much. So how do I handle that situation?
So with this service that we're using, there is the ability to log in on a website with any device. We're just going to be working with IT to make sure if that's allowable or if it needs to be on the tablet.
If we did have instances where someone was out of the country and we needed to go back to voice vote, as a governing body, you could make that call as well.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Duncan and then Councilwoman Hiller. So I won't get into the weeds tonight. I can talk with you in tech later, but my general question is, so I have a council phone. Do I need a whole new device, or is there a way to already integrate it? I actually have both a tablet and a phone. So the long-term question that you don't have to answer this evening is, instead of getting me a new device, since I already, if there's a way to integrate it into something I already have, that would be great to look into. So that's all. Thanks.
Okay. Councilwoman Hiller?
Well, and I have tried to avoid having multiple devices. And so, for instance, right now I am on my laptop. And what would be the easiest, which is connected in an appropriate manner with now the double authentication that the city just set up. And I'm hoping that there'd be some way that I can just be at my that people could be on their phone or on their laptop and use that device both for this participation and for voting. Just throw that in if it's possible. Otherwise, we would each have to have two devices.
And we're going to
communicate.
We are going to look into how feasible that will be, but with the use of it, it might actually be easier to have a separate device so you aren't clicking out of tabs of Zoom. This one will just sit there and it has a quick request to speak button. So it would just be nice to actually have that in addition to your laptop. And these tablets are very small. It's a little bigger than a phone, I would say.
I just hope for, I don't like the expense to the city either, so if we can simplify it with the new authentication to be able to use any device, learning how to do it, I encourage that. Thank you.
Any other questions or a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion approved by Councilwoman Ortiz, second by Councilman Duncan. If you'll call the roll, please. Thank you, Dan.
Councilmember Ortiz?
Yes.
Kell?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Dobler?
Yes.
Duncan?
Yes.
Hofer?
Yes.
Mayor Padilla?
Yes.
Heller?
Yes.
And Valdivia Akla?
Yes.
We have 9 yes, the motion carries.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is 4G. We had somebody signed up to speak. Am I correct? I have on the CID policy amendment, Danielle Twemlow. I don't see her in the audience. Is she online? No. Okay, just check it. I'll ask one more time.
Mayor,
Who is that?
Councilwoman Ortiz, she sent an email and she's wanting the Zoom link. I'll go ahead and give it to her.
Councilman Duncan?
Do we want to have our discussion on this one first, and then while she zooms in, and then public comment after?
Okay.
Gives Danielle some time to get connected.
While we're waiting for her to get online, Madam Clerk, go ahead and read item G, please.
Item G is a resolution introduced by City Manager Dr. Robert M. Perez, amending City of Topeka's policy for community improvement districts and rescinding resolution number 8392.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the governing body. Rhiannon Freeman, our Director of Development Services and Planning, will lead us through this item.
Rhiannon?
Thank you, Mr. City Manager, Mayor, members of the governing body. So the presentation that I'm going to give tonight actually touches on action items G, H, and I. So it's an overview that talks about the updates to the policy of the TIF, the CID, and our RHID policies. So I think probably the best way to do that is to let me go through this and then stop and answer questions at that point in time.
Okay. Sure.
Thank you. All right. So the purpose of updating the policies are outlined in this presentation is just to make key updates and changes to both the tax increment financing TIF, the Community Improvement District CID, and the Reinvestment Incentive Housing District RHID policies. So the purpose behind this process is to bring a uniform approach across the various City of Topeka incentive programs. All right, so each of these slides highlights some of the changes that happen across maybe one or all of the various policies. So the first item that we're going to talk about is the funding agreement. So for the CID, we are going to be adding a funding agreement of $25,000. The purpose for this is that it aligns it with both the TIF and the RHID. So just as a reminder, this funding agreement is what allows the city to cover costs for financial and legal advisors and direct cost of outside consultants. This isn't just, it's not limited to civil engineers and traffic engineers. So right now, the TIF and the RHID already have the funding agreement in place, so just putting it into the CID makes it even across all of our incentive programs. The TIF specifically policy, we've added the addition of engineering fees to be a reimbursable item, and then covering the review of plans and traffic impact studies. And then the change that brings this into alignment for the RHID is the addition of spelling out a timeline for when the funding agreement needs to be entered into. So for this, we're recommending that the funding agreement be entered into this with the city within 15 days of the receipt of the complete housing development plan. So previously, before, I think the way that we were addressing it might have been a little backwards. So we would go through the process of working through our financial advisor to perform a financial analysis and do the but-for test. So therefore, a bill was applied to the project before we had a funding agreement secured. So it just makes sense to put this in process before, once the housing development plan is in our hands. All right, application fees. So this one only relates to the CID. So the proposal is to change the CID fee for application fee from $1,500 to $5,000. This puts it in alignment with both the TIF and the RHID programs as they stand today. Signage. So this is a discussion that's been had back and forth over the past few months as we've brought forward some CID projects for approval. So the additional language in the CID would add language requiring signage to be displayed in each business with a CID sales tax district. So some of the requirements that we've put into place is that the sign must be displayed prominently at each public entrance during the duration of the CID sales tax collection. And then we've outlined a font size that should be at least 18 point, and then a minimum sign size of 4 inches square. I will say when we started this process, we were proposing, I think we came forward with a 8.5 by 11 sign with 30-point font, and then taking this through Policy and Finance Committee, a recommendation was made to scale that size back. So this is our recommendation from that feedback. All right, so this change with affordable housing relates to the TIF. So our RHID program language calls out affordable housing and speaks to the demand and the need, as well as other housing across the city of Topeka. The TIF previously had language that focused on new development, the creation of quality employment opportunities, eliminating blight, but it was brought to our attention that affordable housing was not specifically called out in that, and since that's one of our main priorities as a city, we thought it only made sense to add that language into this policy as well. All right, so provisions and policy guidelines. So the CID, what we're recommending is an additional requirement of certification that neither the developer entity nor any of its shareholders, partners, members is delinquent on any property taxes or special assessment payments on any property that it owns or controls in Shawnee County. This language already exists in both the TIF and RHID policies. And understanding the feedback that we've received in the past, we understand that this is a process that we were putting into place before, but it wasn't written into the policy, so it just made sense to add that in there too, just for making sure that we're doing our due diligence. All right. This one is my favorite because it benefits me greatly. Review committee. So right now the CID and the TIF, we're recommending an adjustment to have the review committee include the following. So it's Assistant City Manager, CFO, Director of Public Works, Director of Planning and Development, the City Attorney or their designees, and then also any city staff that are designated by the City Manager, not limiting our Utilities Director, City's Bond Counsel, or the City's Financial Advisor. This would be consistent with the RHID policy for internal staff and then our external advisors and counsel. Right now, the CID and the TIF, they were just previously adopted policies that were, I think, the CID might have even been 2011. So they just have language of positions that, we may not even have anymore. So it just makes sense for the groups that are reviewing our incentives to be the same groups of people that are used to seeing this kind of thing and are able to have better judgment on the projects that are put before them. All right, so RHID language. So after spending some time with the RHID policy, it's probably been, a year and a half now? 2 years? Yeah, 2 years now. I think we've learned that when we were writing that, we still had a little bit to learn, right? So we had an interesting naming convention. Before we were calling the two phases a district pre-application and then a plan pre-application. And then we found that the more time we spent with this, that's not actually the language that we use in our application. So this update would simply be to change the language to the district application, which is when the applicant comes forward to form or create a district. and then the housing development plan, which is when they come before you with more structure around their deal and we do the but-for analysis. So this change just, I think, provides a clear distinction between the two steps of the application process. Amanda, did I leave anything out of that?
Yeah, I'll just hit on one more piece. There are other changes throughout various policies trying to make things consistent. It was brought to our attention earlier today that one of the areas that we tried to bring consistency to, we didn't quite get right because sometimes we miss things. But in the CID policy itself, Rihanna mentioned about the but-for test and the feasibility. When the CID was passed, it had both a policy and it had a procedure, and not all of the things were in it. So we were always doing a but-for test, but that was in the procedure adopted by the city manager. We added that language into the resolution so that it's in the policy like it is in the TIF as well as the RHID. We also added language to the CID that is consistent with our RHID policy about the records that the developer gives you, which can be very sensitive financial records, being exempt under the Open Records Act, which they are legally exempt, as well as having the ability to enter into a non-disclosure. That language is similar in the TIF agreement or in the TIF policy. We realized today when we were looking at it that it is not identical, so we would ask leave to make that language identical across all three policies. It is very common, especially in a TIF, for a developer to want you to enter into a non-disclosure when you are at the financial analysis stage. Oftentimes at that stage, they don't have tenants that have publicly given their consent to release their names yet, but it matters what type of entity is going in there. Not all fast food chains are the same when it comes to sales or profitability and whether or not the financial analysis works. So in order to actually run a true financial analysis to figure out what is the but-for test, we really do need to know who those tenants are, and oftentimes the only way they will do that is through the non-disclosure. And so that is very common. We would just ask that that language be the same across all three policies. As Rhiannon mentioned, we're trying to get consistency across all.
Deputy Mayor.
Back to the changes on signage for CID. Someone pointed it out online, which I'm surprised I actually missed it. The sign shall be a minimum of 4 inches square? Or is that 4 feet square?
No,
Inches.
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 We started with an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. and
So 2 by 2, 2 inches by 2 inches is the signage that's required?
Yes.
I don't get that. Like, if I'm driving down the road, how am I even supposed to know there's a sign there when it's 2 inches by 2 inches?
You aren't. It's at the register when you
It's a
check out.
register.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was the signage, required signage, like most of our stuff when we have.
Yeah, no,
like,
this would be signage
notice
at
of
the
public hearing
register.
almost kind of signage.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
this is, yeah.
I get it now. Like I said, once it got brought up online, that made me think, wait a second, I didn't catch that, so.
You are correct. You would not be able to see a 2 inch by 2 inch sign.
I was thinking it was kind of like our public hearing signages that we have to put out, that people are required to put out, so I just want to make sure that that was, like I said, that was kind of odd to me, so I was trying to make sure. So thank you.
Mayor? Mayor?
Who's online? I can't. Oh, Christine, Councilman Ortiz? Valdivia, I can't see him, so.
No, it's Councilwoman Valdivia.
Okay. Christina?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I was the one that had the questions about the difference with the NDA and CORA with the SID versus the TIF and the RHID. And I do have some additional questions, more for clarity and transparency's sake, since, you know, a lot of people may just want to know this. When we're looking at the SID and we're looking at that paragraph that I had questioned about, which was lines 113 to 122, I know that you gave the example of the business not wanting to be known ahead of time, but can you give some other definitions of what is defined as sensitive financial information being withheld or not open to CORA or possibly, coming under the NDA?
Yes, and I'll let Rhiannon jump in too, because she deals with this far more than I do. But for example, on a RHID, it is not uncommon that a small housing developer that's doing infill development for affordable housing is guaranteeing that with a personal surety. That means you're looking at their actual bank documents, you're looking at their bank accounts, you're looking at, you've got their social security number. You are looking at, do they financially have the liquidity in order to do that? Because you have to ensure that they can financially afford to do that. But in order to do that, you're talking to their lender about what other projects they have out there, how much are they leveraged, how much are they in debt, do they have assets to support this? Rhiannon's nodding, so I'm going to let her jump in too.
No, yeah, that's a nod of agreement. Yeah, I think that using a financial advisor, that's exactly the kind of removal that provides too. That's also helpful, right? I think that there's times where they need to dig a little bit deeper, and those are questions that oftentimes a developer is more comfortable answering to that individual without releasing that information directly to the city to become a public record. So I think that's, yeah.
So my additional question then is, and I think this just brought the question to my mind, since we've had, the issues with Klossman, since we've had the, and all the back taxes, and now the negotiation, however that's going, then we've had the issues with, Lou McGinnis and back taxes, et cetera. So what I'm just trying to surmise in this kind of way, we've already had these conversations about the possibility of this RHID kind of changing, possibly if Klossman comes into a deal where we would, stamp out some of that, if they owe back taxes, there's a possibility that we would agree to make an exception for him. So when it comes to sensitive financial information, I guess I want to assure the public that this is not going to be, because it's been in the TIF for a while, and I didn't know it, and it's been in the RHID, I guess, but this is not some way to try to hide information as far as what there may have been in the way of bankruptcies for the people, the entities, the LLCs, whatever, that are applying. This is not a way to, hide that they are, they have too much debt in comparison to, to what they're bringing in. I mean, what kind of things does this not protect? This NDA and this CORA? And you might not be able to answer that, but that's troubling that you wouldn't be able to.
Well, bankruptcies are a matter of public record, so anybody can look up bankruptcies. Those are a matter of public record. This is a very common provision in cities' economic development plans. It's not to hide whether or not someone has debt when it comes before a governing body. If you don't have these types of provisions, you are less likely to get a full analysis of the individual so that you can make a financial analysis that comes to the governing body, as the financial analysis is a public document. It might not have the specific debt that they have and who they owe it to, but their financial analysis saying yes or no, you should approve a project, is going to tell you if they're over leveraged, if they're not over leveraged. But no, these provisions aren't written with the idea of hiding anything. I mean, things that are a matter of public record are a matter of public record. This is about being able to do a true financial analysis on the project to see whether or not the individual can feasibly do the project.
And then does this last through the paragraph with the NDA and the CORA, this lasts through the life of the TID and all of that, through the life of the project?
It depends on how it's negotiated or what it is. Oftentimes, for example, on an NDA on like a tenant, once the tenant's released and named, that's no longer relevant. If you deny the project and it never comes forward, those documents they take back, or we don't even have those documents. So it truly just depends on how it's negotiated, and each of those may be different.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Okay. Councilwoman Hiller?
Thank you. In response to what was just discussed, I know that in the past we have had some executive sessions where the financials were discussed and we were able to ask questions under the cloak of the executive session so that when there were questions, we weren't precluded from that. So I don't know if that would that still be available with the new language?
Yes.
Okay. The question that I was going to ask is, okay, now that we've lined up all these fees, is there a twofer or a threefer? I mean, if somebody's applying, is it a single fee that could get the exploration done on all three opportunities, or is it a separate fee for each one?
So it is a separate application fee for each policy. So if you want a TIF, you need to apply for a TIF. If you want an RHID, you need to apply for an RHID. It is not uncommon for us to recommend that you do one funding analysis of the 25,000 because oftentimes, not often, if they're asking for multiple incentives, you have to evaluate those as a package because otherwise you can't tell if it meets the but-for test if you haven't analyzed how each of those pieces stack together. So it is not uncommon for us to ask for that $25,000 deposit simply once. However, they have to add to that. So if they've hit the 25,000, we don't keep doing work until they've refunded the deposit under the financial analysis or financial agreement.
So if I was going to do a project with a TIF and a SID, let's just say two of those three, it's $50,000.
No.
The application fee is different than the
application fee is different.
5,000 each.
Yes. It's 5,000 each for the application fee because those are different things. You've got to evaluate if they've submitted all of the right documentation for the TIF. Have they submitted all the right documentation for the CID? So those are non-refundable application fees. But the deposit is what we use to pay to analyze whether or not it meets the but-for test. That's being analyzed together if you're asking for a TIF and a CID on the same project. So we're only going to initially ask for the 25,000. However, those agreements are prefaced on when you run out of money, we make you give us more money to continue the analysis until it's completed.
Yeah, that's just the deposit, then it's actual cost for all the others.
Correct.
Regardless. Thank you.
Okay. She is? Okay. Any further comment from the body here or questions? Okay. Danielle, I see you online now. You're signed up for public comment on this, and I think the next two items. If you're ready, you can proceed with your comment here.
Thank you. I appreciate the flexibility. I've been on Zoom meetings all day and did not realize it was still snowing. So thank you. And thank you, Councilwoman Ortiz, for sending that over. I'm really speaking, I think there's a lot of really intentional improvements to these next three ordinances, but I'm here to ask that we look at ways that we can actually improve these to, grow our benefits for all residents and not just the higher income brackets. There's a lot of ways that we can do these types of contracts to prioritize more equity-based budgeting projects based on data and the need. This is something I know Dr. Perez is really successful and familiar with in his previous city. It's within our ability to develop policies and ordinances that align with our goals. And other cities have done it really successfully. In Kansas City, Missouri, they did the Troost Avenue Community Improvement District, revitalizing a historically underserved area through targeted infrastructure investments. Portland, Oregon did a TIF to fund Urban Renewal District to set aside affordable housing to prevent displacement. Newton, Kansas used an RHID to address housing shortages and promote their economic development. And we can follow these models. And we have to take the right steps in the right order. Our housing study has outlined 4 critical priorities: fund the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, establish a strategic land bank, support community development corporations, and expand weatherization and home repair programs. Additionally, we have to align our goals with the city goals with the 5 housing goals, which is stabilizing core neighborhoods, improving housing security to our most vulnerable residents, supporting new affordable housing development, addressing problem landlords, absentee owners, and vacant properties, and expand partnerships. What we are seeing, however, is a pattern of prioritizing higher end developments that are not the most urgent needs for our community. This is skipping steps and failing those who need it the most. We need clear, driven policies for community improvement districts, tax increment financing, and other incentives. We can do examples such as requiring at least 50% of CID projects to be in historically disinvested areas, mandating anti-displacement assessments, dedicating a portion of CID revenue to affordable housing and rental assistance, investing in multimodal transit to underserved communities to have access to jobs and services, public green spaces and community centers, creating resident-led advisory board in the areas that are getting these projects, and mandating annual public reports. These policies are not radical, they're responsible, they're done in many other communities where the language specifically helps align the goals and the development with what our community needs at the time. And it can change. It might change from year to year, and it's a reassessment process. That's what data-driven policy really does. And we have the power to make those changes with the wording and invest development in areas that need it the most by really structuring the language to incentivize and prioritize development in those areas. So I urge everyone to look at ways that we can continue to do that as we amend these policies. And I'll speak to the other two at those times. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we've had our discussion and public comment. Is there a motion for the chair to entertain?
Move to approve item 4G.
Motion to approve 4G by Councilman Duncan. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by, is that Councilwoman Ortiz? Okay. If you call the roll, please.
Kell,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Hofer,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Acala,
Yes.
and Ortiz.
Yes.
We have 9 yes, the motion carries.
Okay. We'll move to the next item on the agenda, Agenda H. Madam Clerk.
H is a resolution introduced by City Manager Dr. Robert Perez, amending the City of Topeka's policy for tax increment financing districts and rescinding resolution number 9016.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the governing body. As Rhiannon has already spoke to this, we'll stand for any questions you may have.
Any questions for Rhiannon from the body? Checking to make sure I can see everybody online. Any questions there? I know. I just want to give her a chance. Okay, seeing none. Ms. Twemlow is also signed up to speak on this item as well. So Danielle, when you're ready, go ahead and start.
Thank you. We don't often get to talk about renewing different policies and wording, which I think is really important for us to do. So I'm really glad that we're taking a closer look at them. So I want to take the opportunity to kind of speak to options that we have. So recently, the Kansas Legislative Post-Audit Report published in October of 2024 exposed major issues with TIF districts across the state. One that they evaluated was our College Hill TIF project, and they found that it was the most expensive TIF that they had audited, where it is expected that our general fund is covering an estimated 40% of the city's cost associated with the College Hill TIF project. It created no job growth reported, and it led to actually an increase in crime in the area. TIFs was originally designed to revitalize blighted areas, but too often it is misused to subsidize high-end development in affluent areas while ignoring the communities that need investment most. Research from Washington University's Journal of Law and Policy confirms that TIF is frequently used for suburban shopping centers and commercial projects, driving up sprawl, isolating low-income residents, and diverting investment away from the very neighborhoods it's meant to support. Even when TIF is used in lower income areas, it often freezes tax revenues and pre-development levels. This means schools, fire, and police services struggle to keep up with the growing needs as that revenue doesn't come in, hurting low income residents most. And we must urge some change of course. So if the TIF is going to be used in Topeka, it must be structured to prevent displacement and promote truly inclusive growth. So part of the wording that we can add and create ordinances that are helpful to our communities, having anti-displacement and affordable housing requirements, requiring 25% of new housing developments funded by TIF must be affordable for low-income families. Establish a tenant protection fund. We need these tenant rights in place. There's community benefit agreements, like making sure that all the projects will have living wages for workers, or 20% of construction contracts must go to minority and women-owned businesses, public green spaces, having 30% of TIF funds support small business grants or low-interest loans, and other commercial space interests. Lots of transparency and accountability to make sure we're following through, like equity impact reports. And those kinds of things can make sure that we're not creating wasteful projects like we have in the past, which, you know, we won't keep rehashing that, but we must make sure that our tax incentives work for the people who need them the most. If our council is really serious about equitable development, we must take action in creating these policies and procedures that really make sure we are pushing them toward the right direction. The use of TIF financing in the middle and upper income suburb communities lessens the incentive for developers to use TIF in impoverished communities. If developers can receive the same financial incentives offered by the government through TIF in a wealthier location, better suited to development, then they will choose the wealthier locations over low income areas to carry out their development projects. They likely will have been built anyways, increasing the tax revenue and having no real benefit to the community. The but-for test is an extremely difficult one to be able to define and is really super subjective. And we know from lots of studies that have been done that TIFs are just not helpful in the end, in the long run, particularly not to communities who need it the most. So I hope that as we look at redoing a lot of these ordinances and making sure wording is right, that we also look at ways that we can strengthen equitable growth across our community.
Okay. Thank you. Having fun over there with that bell? That's okay. It's a musical interlude. Okay. So we've heard discussion and public comment. Is there a motion to entertain?
Move to approve item 4H.
Motion to approve item 4H by Councilman Duncan, second by Deputy. Pardon? I think the second was Deputy Mayor. If you call the roll, please.
Councilmember Miller,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Hofer,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Acala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
and Kell.
Yes.
Okay, we have 9 yes, the motion carries.
Okay. Move to action item I, if the clerk will read.
I is a resolution introduced by City Manager Dr. Robert M. Perez, amending City of Topeka's policy for the reinvestment housing incentive districts and rescinding resolution numbers 9379 and 9452.
Okay, any additional city manager?
No, sir.
Okay, granted? Okay. Danielle, you're signed up for this item as well? When you're ready, go ahead and start.
Thank you. Last time you have to hear from me, but I wanted to take the opportunity to address something that I heard last week about looking for ways to incentivize developers to develop low-income affordable housing. And what I want to point out is that one of those options is the RHID. So while RHID funds are not costing the city, they're coming from those state funds as we established, they're not infinite. We have to be diligent in setting up parameters for its distribution to meet the needs of our community. This council has brought up the fact that costs of building have increased, and we know that a 3-bedroom, single-family home at a basic level of cost is roughly $155,000 right now to build. So in order for a developer to make a profit, they'll have to turn around and sell it for $250,000 to $300,000 or more. But by providing the RHIDs, we can offset the cost of building or rehabilitation costs so that the developer can maintain a profit while keeping the cost of the house affordable. Currently, we're not asserting those boundaries. Therefore, contractors are choosing to build in areas where they can sell or rent at higher rates, plus receive the benefit from the RHID on top of that revenue, lining their pockets even more. But we can be intentional with this. So based on the RHID proposed amendments for our community, we can have some suggested policy that encourages low-income, affordable housing development and business development in underserved areas. Our housing study directly mentions the east side of town as one of those places as well that desperately needs to have incentivized development. So we can prioritize within this that we are providing these types of incentives to building of affordable housing, low income. So I'm appreciative that that was suggested wording that was placed in there, but many other cities have made it very specific that there are only priorities under different areas based on what their community needs. We can mandate that 30 to 40% of RHID supported units are designated for affordable. Making sure that we have higher benefits such as longer duration or maybe even a greater reimbursement for those projects where we need them most. We again need the renter protections so that when property tax rates and other things do go up with development, that renters are not feeling it the most by that kind of increase that may occur for the property owner. We have to focus on the historically underserved areas with the housing shortage, higher poverty rates, and make sure that we're proportionate when we're doing these projects. I'm sure that there's some sort of tracking that I was reassured is happening at which price points are being addressed first. But we do know from the housing study that the higher priced point developments are way farther down the road. They are not within our top priority areas, and we're looking at doing pieces of that housing study before we've even begun doing the pieces that are most priority. So while it's mentioned in the housing study, it is not a priority within the housing study. We can also have some business development, making sure that we're having small business development included in RHID funds. Again, hiring local workforce, making sure that that's a requirement, and making sure people are not displaced if there are some developments in areas that are housing. We can even request that there's infrastructure investment, ensuring that sidewalks and bike lanes or green spaces are provided in these areas, and continue again with that transparency, but also getting community feedback from people who are living within those areas. So I wanted to make sure that we took the opportunity to look at ways to make these stronger and to really make a better impact with the wording. I'm glad that we're streamlining things. I'm glad we're adding affordable housing, but we can actually take it one step further and be more intentional about the use. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. No further comments or discussion? Councilwoman Valdivia-Alcala.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. So that whole thing just totally blew me away. I need to know, can all of Ms. Twemlow's public comments on all three be added to the public record? Hello?
Sorry, we have our new deputy clerk here today, so we were trying. I am not aware. Did Ms. Termlow, did you submit those via email? If you can, if you didn't, can you? And we can make sure they're submitted. Sorry, without Brenda here, we're not as good.
Yes, I did, but I can forward that again. Thank
Perfect. Yes, we will get those included. Thank you.
Thank you. Sylvia said, I think that there was an email, but I haven't checked yet, so thank you on that, Mayor.
Okay. Anything else? Anything further? The motion to entertain?
Move to approve item 4I.
Motion to approve item 4I by Councilman Duncan, second by Deputy Mayor. If you call the roll, please.
Councilmember Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Hofer,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Heller,
Yes.
Valdivia Acala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
and Miller.
Yes.
Okay, we have 9 yes, the motion carries.
Thank you. Move on to non-action items, number 5 on the agenda. Thank you, Rhiannon. If the clerk will read.
Okay, we have non-action item 5A is a discussion to consider naming and dedicating the city's facility located at 3425 Northwest Waterworks Drive as the Jack Alexander Water Treatment Plant.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the governing body. If I could defer to Councilman Duncan to lead us through this item.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Manager. There's some ideas you wish you'd had sooner. And when it comes to recognizing a person, you certainly wish that that person was still here when you did it, so they would know that it happened. In this case, this idea came out of attending Jack Alexander's funeral. Council members Ortiz and Banks and I were there having a conversation. It occurred to us that our water treatment facility has no name. It's just the City of Topeka Water Treatment Facility. Jack Alexander obviously played a pivotal role in this community, and he was our first, at that time, water commissioner. So we thought this was appropriate. It's not in tonight's packet. I know it'll be in next week's, but I'm just going to go ahead and read the resolution that we put together and we discussed with his family so that everyone kind of has an idea of why we're bringing this forward. A resolution officially naming the Topeka Water Treatment Plant and Administration Building. Whereas F.S. Jack Alexander Sr. was the first African American elected to any Topeka city office, first elected in 1973. Whereas during his many years of elected service, Mr. Alexander led the city's water department as city water commissioner. Whereas Mr. Alexander played a pivotal role in leading government in many areas, holding multiple positions across local and state government. Whereas Mr. Alexander was a native Kansan and proud Topeka High School graduate who excelled in basketball, serving as team captain his senior year on the school's last segregated team, the Ramblers, before graduating in 1949 and being inducted into the school's Sports Hall of Fame. Whereas Mr. Alexander served the United States and Topeka in the U.S. Navy during the Korean War. And whereas Mr. Alexander was married to his beloved Matilda Tilly Simon for more than 71 years while they raised 3 children in Topeka. I actually believe we have an updated that mentions all those children and grandchildren, so we'll make sure next week we get that mentioned in there. Whereas Mr. Alexander was well known for his love of and involvement in local sports, including organizing Topeka's first black bowling league and being a fast-pitch softball player. Whereas throughout his life and career, Mr. Alexander encouraged others to be involved in the community, serve in elected office, and support the efforts of those who work on the front lines for the city. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the mayor and council of the city of Topeka, which I think is a little different language too, but that essentially we would change the name of the Topeka Water Treatment Facility and Administration Offices to the Jack Alexander Senior Water Treatment Facility. So that's the idea behind this. It's where it came from. Like I said, we did have discussed this with his family. There's no objections there. So obviously we hope next week if there's any other questions, we're happy to answer them to move this forward. We thought it was an appropriate thing to do, not just remember Jack, but to honor the city itself. So thank you, Mayor. That's all I have on it.
Okay.
I don't know if Councilwoman Ortiz wants to say anything.
Councilwoman Ortiz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Spencer, you have, your resolution is wrong, and there's like three things.
I know, I realized I called up the wrong one on my computer after I'd started reading it. So we'll get the corrected one, which they have, the staff has it. It'll be in next week's packet.
Thank you.
They have the right one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I wasn't thinking about this until Spencer had started talking about it. I want to thank him for that. I was trying to get Mr. Alexander in the hearse and get him on his way to his final resting place. Jack was a mentor to me, a godfather. He was just a great guy that could just reach across the aisles and talk to anybody and make you feel like $1 million. He started, he was one of the founders of Clinton Heights Steel, NIA. I could go on and on and on, but I won't. But if he was alive today, he would say, this is much appreciated, but not needed. That's just the type of guy that he was. So again, his family is just elated that we would even think about honoring him. And so I hope my colleagues would jump on board with this, and it'll just be an honor to see that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mm-hmm. Further comment? Councilwoman Hiller.
Well, I'll pitch in and broadly support as well, Jack. There are a lot of other stories and little vignettes that we could tell and include in a mile-long attribute to him. He was great, a role model for me as well. And he was on and off the camera, always there and always for real, and just a great man for Topeka. So thank you all for coming up. I didn't get in that same conversation at his funeral, but I was there too. Thanks.
Mr. Mayor.
Deputy Mayor.
I agree with what Councilman Duncan said about, sometimes we need to look at these things while they're still alive. I think we need to kind of take a hard look at some of our facilities, some of our roads, things like that, where people have impacted our community in a great way. Looking at things for what their background is, what part of town they might have lived in, what part of town they might have impacted the best, and start looking at some of those things. It's a great honor to have that bestowed upon you. Part of Leavenworth Fairgrounds is named after my father, and the sad thing for me was he wasn't able to see it when it happened, but that is one thing that I'm very proud of, to be able to see something like that on the wall and know for me, for my sisters, my mother, my kids, and my nieces and nephews, get to see that and know that as right now, my father will always be enshrined on those fairgrounds. And just like Mr. Alexander here will always be attached to the city of Topeka in a very visible way, we need to start looking at other people that have impacted our community and recognize them and recognize their families for all the hard work and how they've shaped this city. Thank you.
Further comments? I'll reserve mine for next week, when we do in fact bring the resolution forward. Okay? Have nothing else on non-action items, so we'll move to public comment. We have two individuals signed up this evening for public comment. Mr. Richard Laird. Richard Laird? Mr. Laird?
Yeah, I'm hard of hearing, I apologize.
I'll speak up louder. Just start there at the podium, unless you're more comfortable at the seat.
I would like to propose, these are code compliance violations. I got one December 27th, due in 8 days. I think Mother Nature made my argument for me. Can't get it done in the middle of the winter. I suspect your code compliance officers want a full-time job year-round, but writing up things that require gutter replacements, siding, painting, One of those houses, I got a courtesy that it has to be painted like by May the 1st. I called the officer and asked him if we could just extend all of that. He said the front door is dilapidated. I couldn't get my iPhone to print to my printer. I was going to bring you some pictures that would contradict his statements on the complaint. But it's a waste of their time, waste of my time, public's time. People aren't going to get out in the middle of the winter. I mean, we have some good winters. We have some 60-degree weather in January. So every now and then you might be able to get something done. But as a procedural change, I'd like to see structural requirements not written up on a violation in the middle of the winter. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Okay, we have Mr. Sean Niddle.
All right. First, I want to start by thanking the governing body for allowing me the time to speak. A couple weeks ago, you guys had an item on the agenda for the possibility of raising the sales tax. And a couple remarks in that regards. I believe it was Councilor Kell who brought up that the sales tax is going to affect everyone. Not just, I think one of the other options discussed was a mill levy, which would end up really hurting the renters versus everybody else. And somebody got up last week and said it's a regressive tax. It's going to affect the lower class more. Well, sales tax is going to increase everybody. And with the energy we have coming into Topeka, we can split this up. And so that not even just Topekans are bearing the brunt of this. Those visiting from out of town, visiting for local events, such as the new hockey team coming this fall, visitors for Eats and Beats, stuff like that, it's going to get put through everybody. Sales tax is going to bring people into this town, and it's going to bring more income coming in. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is, as a Topekan, I'm trying to do my due diligence and read into these items. But it seems like the divisive issue of the sales tax had a lot of people who had comments, had feelings about it. So as I believe Councilor Miller brought up, a passing vote by the governing body would simply put this to a vote for Topekans to have their voice heard. And it would allow Topekans to voice their opinion by going to the ballot box and voting, do you want an increase or not? So I'm not saying that I'm in favor of raising taxes without consequence or the governing body having a plan, because it affects my pocket as well. But however, for the wide range of ideas, then why not give the people who have the idea, who have all the opinions, the Topekans who come up and are going to argue one way or another, put it on a ballot and let them have the ultimate say. Lastly, where I want to settle is support for Topeka Police. There was comments made the last couple weeks about a situation came up and it was possibly a bad shoot. Well, we're not funding that. And I agree, a bad shoot is a bad shoot. As somebody who's had experience in law enforcement, in corrections, I've had a little bit of this. And you know what? Just because you are sworn to protect or sworn to do different stuff doesn't give you the right to be above the law. In fact, you should be held to a higher standard than the law because you are the person charged with enforcing it. So if it's a bad shoot, it's a bad shoot. And we need to get rid of those officers. But we need to do everything we can do to support the Topeka Police Department, because we have competitors who are poaching our great officers because of better stuff, better compensation, better equipment. And can't think of any Topekan who would be upset with response times dropping, because we need officers. Because 2 hours to wait on a call when you're calling for a reason is too long to wait. So as I conclude, I would just say, you know what? Let Chief Vallejo get in, get his feet wet, see what his plan is moving forward. I thank you very much for your time tonight. Hope you guys have a great night. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Okay. Move on to announcements. Madam Clerk.
Okay, we have the Citizen Government Review Committee meeting tomorrow from 6 to 8 p.m. That will be completely virtual due to the weather. And then for our agenda for the March 4th governing body meeting, we have one appointment, 2 presentations. For the consent agenda, just the minutes, no applications at this time. Action items, we have 2 resolutions, both for the Branish Street Bridge repair. One project number 121019, first phase, and then 121019, phase 4. We have an ordinance for the university liquor, 200 feet exemption. Non-action items, we have a discussion for the 2025 Topeka Dreams program funding. And that is all.
Okay, thank you.
you.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I just want to say thank you to all the City of Topeka team members who are out there working our streets, keeping us safe, and so forth. The other thing I just wanted to say is, Megan, well done tonight. You did a great job. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilwoman Hiller.
None except thanks for all the workers and all the work that everyone's doing to hold things together. Oh, I should mention, because of the weather and the illness of one of our committee members, the Public Health and Safety Committee meeting will not be held tomorrow morning after all. And looks like one of our members has a conflict with a proposed date, so we will be setting a date, hopefully within a week, sometime soon.
Okay, is that all? Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Valdivia Acala.
Thank you, Mayor. Just safety to all the workers out there working outside. Thank you for all you do with help keeping us safe. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilwoman Ortiz.
No comments.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Kell.
I just want to say, I believe our street crews and our contractors are doing a great job out there. I got to see it firsthand on the way here. My wife made a comment to me earlier that she saw one of the contractors doing a great job getting the streets cleared today. So I just want to say thank you to all the men and women out there that are putting in all that extra time in the cold and getting our streets taken care of for us. Thank you.
Councilman Miller.
Nothing, Mayor. Thank you very much.
Okay. Councilman Dover.
Nothing, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Councilman Duncan.
Just check on people. It's cold the next couple of days, and I've got my next office hours this Sunday at 3 o'clock at Fairlawn Plaza. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilwoman Hofer.
Nothing tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Well, likewise, everyone, thank you for all the workers who are out there trying to keep the streets safe. And I encourage our citizens, show a little patience, slow down a little bit. Don't try and drive 35, 40 miles an hour on this kind of ice and snow, because you're just not going to stop in time. So take care of yourselves, look out for each other, make sure you keep warm, and if you see somebody in distress, call someone to help them or help them yourself. So thank you very much for your attendance this evening. Is there no further business comes before this body? The meeting is adjourned.